Hi there, welcome everyone. This is my opportunity to share some of my experiences in current teaching area, especially in building information modeling at South Metro TAFE Master Campus. So I'll go through these quite unique experiences of interacting in terms of teaching, learning, and also evaluating the students. My name is Dr. Domal. I work as a lecturer in civil structural engineering at Munster Campus, Western Australia. So the context in terms of my teaching experiences is mainly at a paraprofessional level in VET, vocational education and training area. I got my cohorts at different age groups with quite diverse backgrounds, some prior learning experiences and commitments in terms of the flexibility that need to be offered depending on their busy hours and the support if there is any additional support needed. Majority of my students are international students. That gives me an opportunity to understand some of the backgrounds as well, and my experience also draws to that in terms of which culture is individual, which culture is collective. So depending on that, I encourage the learning practices which improve their knowledge skills, at the same time attitudes as well. My perception is that my learners learn by doing, engaging in a lot of workshops, experiments, and also sometimes being in the field, surveying certain aspects of ground or land, and going into material testing labs and doing some material strength properties and so on. So determine some of the basic civil materials, what are the characteristics, properties, and so on. That gives them a very good feel, hands-on experience in doing the experiments and so on. They have a different expectations. Teaching in this context is very, very challenging when you've got different age groups, different backgrounds. So you've got to see that you have a very inclusive delivery which addresses majority of their needs. Before we go into the actual learning process and to opportunity to share my experiences, I want to give you a bit of background of the studies as well, which helps you to understand how the design goes in a real practice. But to that, we need to know where does it starts. It starts with sometimes with the failures, understanding why the failures occur because of poor collaboration and coordination in designing those infrastructure needs. So these are some of the recent examples of the collapse of the retaining the soil lateral pressure causing quite a havoc on highway. And this is another example with the Gold Coast Disney World disaster where I think 4 people killed, including 2 teenagers. That's all leads to very basic fundamental design as well as maintenance operational issues in civil assets. So other example would be cantilevered car parks. So this is all with what type of material you have put into design, and what standards you are trying to adhere, how you have calculated fundamentals, so that it doesn't go. It gives you the life expectancy. Generally. What is expected with majority of the civil structure is a lifetime. You're looking at 80, 60 years, and there are plenty of structures you can see which has a life of 600, 800 years. But again, the maintenance comes a very important aspect. But your basic foundation, in terms of designing that strong structure is very, very important. And how do we teach with the students? Looking at the overall workflow is very, very important, and it's better we understand what process they go through. So other with the substrate, poor design of the substrate. Again, the very recent accident which happened along the Sydney-Melbourne train routes, because the substrate has become very cushy and train tracks are completely derailed. So a lot of the building or the structure come into realization by all these agencies and all these stakeholders. And if you have a one common model which is centralized, then everyone can see the changes and make changes to that, and they can understand why the changes have been made by, say, for example, an architect, and why the changes has been made by a structural engineer. If you're moving a column, then architecture need to understand and see how this affects the envelope of the building, or this affects the contractor. If it is a ducting contractor, how does it affect the HVAC system? So there's a lot of coordination, collaboration consistently happens, and we try to basically teach some of these foundations in the civil construction diploma course here in Munster campus. But how do we go in designing that particular learning strategies or the overall curriculum? Part of the curriculum is already given to us from the training packages, so that defines the skills, knowledge needed, and how to apply them in a workplace context. There are a few ways they want to assess us, opportunities for us to assess us. So my start of the learning content or the delivery is a bit reversed. Rather than looking at overall curriculum, we go and see what ways we can assess. What are the venues for assessments. That we start with unpacking unit of competency to develop these holistic assessment strategies based on how do we capture the performance evidence, and how do we capture the knowledge of evidence, which is critical. And this further lays down what effective teaching methods and strategies we can put into a classroom environment, which can be more inclusive, as I said earlier, and also instrumental in the context that would reflect real life job role requirement. So this led me to lay some planning preparedness, that includes everything from logistics, software requirement, all that. But going through this model of Bowman was very interesting and challenging, and the application really made sense, moving from connections to concept to concrete and conclusion. But overall, it is also time that we allow the students to progress. That's very, very important. It's not that we just give the learning content and we ask them to be assessed. Sometimes they need to digest, and they need to go and research. They need to be a bit independent, self-directed. All these have been provided. If you look at my learning, my lesson plan, you can see how we start giving an icebreaker, energizer, then try to share particular session objectives, and create that mindset, that there is a new topic, new knowledge that is going to come, and just try to relax, and get yourself acquainted, get your notes, even simple things like getting your notes ready and getting your software or a computer ready, setting up your chairs, So that shows a bit of an active rearrangement of the chairs, for example, if required, if they have to think in pair and so on. So a lot of input is being given. Even I take plenty of time to demonstrate, how the modeling, standard modeling is done, preparation is done, showing some calculation, scheduling aspects, showing some layouts, how standard layouts can be made, and how this can be achieved to a beautiful drawing plans and bill of quantities for surveyors and procurement guys and so on. So the Revit tool on its own is very powerful tool. We try to demonstrate them. We check for understanding by asking simple questions, to make sure there is a trigger in their mindsets, and they go through this process of ladder of influence step by step, to make sure they have this distinction of what is a general coordination requirement, and how we encourage that, how we encourage that either online, or how we encourage them when they have the face-to-face. So there is a lot of emotional, psychological aspects here, that try to improve the attitude, because a lot of the time knowledge and skill it can be delivered either classroom or online, but it is mainly the attitude, so that we want them to improve. by practicing, by constructively reviewing the process leading to execution, coordination, drawing calculations, assumptions, and so on. Finally, when they practice it, we tend to observe and evaluate how their practice is. If they need additional support, we tend to provide the additional support. Again, there is plenty of videos we recorded, of how the operations are done. Then finally we conclude providing the feedback, and the feedback is two-way, and close the opportunity on what they learned at the end of the day, and what is the takeaway and what they need to follow for the next session. So usual my classroom spaces are something like these, with their computers and screens. So it's a quite beautiful spaces where we provide them, and also desk spaces, so they can model the structure and visualize the structure. They got the two screens. They can shift between these two screens. You have one side instructions, another screen you run the software and do the detailed modeling and part construct from different stages, from basic structural stick model to a much more detail with all the envelopes, all the floors, walls, foundations, and other systems, mechanical systems. So that gives a package for them. But in the meantime, if a problem comes, time to time, during the sessions, I tend to ask them to group them together and look at the data. It is in the spreadsheets or it is in the model. Look at it and to see how and basically follow some of the grounding principles behind those spreadsheets, why they have been done like that, and where this data actually flows into another department or other services, and what are the mistakes. Give an opportunity for them to correct themselves, rather than me involving there, and I will be merely an observer. But if they are making a purely a bigger mistake, then I will try to jump in and start to correct it. And sometimes I give a role of leadership. So someone is a design coordinator, someone is a surveyor, someone is a steel erector. So I give them a typical role play of what the particular role has to do and how they have to question. The questioning is very, very important, and depending on that, how people as a leader demonstrate and how they incorporate that requirement and make some changes, sensible changes, reasonable changes, but having a consensus within the team that shows leadership as well as their ability that they have engaged and learn a typical topic on that particular day. But what is the future with this particular training is again going with online. But what you see here is not only the model that has been developed as a solo, but it is being coordinated. So you can see a typical chat window on the extreme right side, but there is a property window on this side. So if the model is running, then if we start to create roles for different students, then they will come in and they will address those technical queries, and it goes on to different levels, and I will be a validator, and we can record that continuous process. We can reveal, so we have a complete evidence of how the model has been developed, or from input from different stakeholders. So that's the future, but it requires again plenty of planning resources on the student side, on our end as well. But majority of the time we tend to stick to few popular softwares which provide education and research free licenses, and it is more of giving that access for them and solve a bigger problem. They see a bigger challenge, and more. It is more with detail, and how it aligns with some of the standards and national construction codes built into it, and this can go into further. Not only having a conceptual model, does the detail has been verified. Is an agreeable model which has a safety built into it. But all these with a very safe environment, giving them the opportunity, giving them the pointers, and also talking to some of the industry experts. Sometimes I bring industry people into the sessions, and then they can ask questions, and they can also be demonstrate what industry wants, and that gives them a chance for preparedness. All these episodes of doing these simulated projects um, can be can be repeated in their CVs, and when they go to interviews, they have something to talk about how they affected this design process. And thank you. And yeah, this is my oven, a homemade one, but I encourage that sort of informal or type of casual engagement generally at the closing of the semester. So you are all welcome at any point in time and check some dough and the ingredients, and we enjoy a beautiful pizza and beer and talk over it. Thank you very much.